Hello friends and welcome back to Sidd'sTechnolog. I'm your host Siddharth Chauhan, as you already know it. Few years back I did a video on how to install SQL Server 2017. You can find the link up here. And today in this video we are going to do how to install SQL Server 2022. Microsoft has already announced SQL Server 2025 and which is currently in preview, and I believe is going to be out in public, will be generally available from next year. But SQL Server 2022 has been around for a while, and the adoption rate is similar to any other versions of SQL Server, where people find their current versions to be more stable, and unless they are really reaching the end of life, they don't think about upgrading. So most probably people who are maybe already in 2014 or less, rare people, or maybe 2016 and 17 who are looking to upgrade today, they would be probably going to upgrade to 2022, which is more stable and is also the version which is running in cloud space. So if you can see on my screen, I have already have the setup downloaded. We are going to do a custom install so that we can see what options comes up. All right, so let's go into the folder and click on my setup.exe. It's going to ask me to run it. I will just minimize it for now and just see how things will go from here. So once the setup is open up, you will be greeted with a familiar screen which we have even seen in past few years or past few iterations. You have on the left hand side similar links: planning, installation, maintenance, tools, and stuff like that. And on the right hand side, we're going to have the details around that. For example, right now by default, the planning is the first option and there are the details around it. So for example, if you are upgrading, then of course I would strongly suggest that you download and install Database Migration Assistant. The link is over here so that you can run it. As you can see, it will check your existing SQL Server and ensure that it is ready to be upgraded to 2022. Let's go to installation. If you are doing a fresh installation, then we can simply just quickly jump over to the installation. We don't have to go into the DMA tool and talk about it. Maybe in subsequent video we can talk about it, how does it work and how not. For today it's going to be a vanilla install, so let's see how things will work. Or maybe once 2025 is out, we can look at this DMA tool and maybe upgrading our components from 2022 to 2025 and see whether it is ready. So there are some additional tools which now is not bundled within the SQL Server installation. For example, the reporting services have been moved out. Management studios, of course, as well as SQL Server data tools, which earlier used to known as the BI tools. So all of these are additional standard installations that you have to download separately in order to work with them. So let's do a new SQL Server installation. Now the newer versions of SQL Server are like kind of the ones which are being used in cloud as well. They have the interface which is more in tune with keeping Azure in mind, specifically when I say cloud, because of course Azure is a cloud platform from Microsoft and this is a Microsoft product, so they are more in tuned. Go back. Now here in the first screen, of course we are talking about edition. Here you can pick, of course we are going to do a developer edition which is free to be installed on a non-production systems. And so this is what we are going to do. Of course you can do an evaluation, which is going to mean that is going to expire in 6 months or so, and then you have a very trimmed down version which is known as Express, that you can also bundle up and even ship along with your application if you want to. Okay, but this has really a lot of limit to it. Developer edition is basically based upon an enterprise edition, so it got all the features what you're going to get in SQL Server Enterprise. If you select an option for enter the product key, you can literally enter a product key. If you want a standard to be installed out of it, you can do that, or even if you want to do an enterprise, you can do that too. Okay, and so it will start using the features as per that capability. Of course, if you are on a VM and have downloaded it. Let's suppose you created a VM, not a SQL VM, a normal VM, and you are installing a SQL Server, then you can just simply tie it up back to your Azure subscription and select whether you want to do a standard or enterprise. So for now, I'm doing it on my laptop. So I'm just going to do developer edition. Click next. Of course, this is going to be the EULA or end user license agreements. As per the edition you have selected, this is going to change, right? As you can see at the top, it is for developer edition. And I'm going to accept that and click on next. It's going to run some rules. Let's quickly go back and see what are the rules it runs. So it is checking whether I am the administrator on this machine, whether I have the required privileges, whether the computer is pending for a restart from maybe a previous service pack or installation and stuff like that. Okay, so all of them are passed. So these are the global rules which are really important for the success of the installation. Now after that, it's going to do check whether there were any updates. If you want, you can include them at the setup, or you can simply skip them. Then it's going to do another rule check for installations. Okay, whether certain features can be used or can cause a problem while installation. You can see there is a warning for the firewall, that because the firewall is enabled, it could be very much possible that the instance might not be reachable after installation. So it is giving it as a warning that you may or may not have to include specific Windows firewall rules in order to make it reachable over your network. So let's click on next. Now, as I mentioned earlier, now the newer iterations of SQL Server are, of course, Azure is now really popular, and of course the SQL Server people are adopting and moving to the cloud. So this is more specified towards the Azure. Of course, we are doing locally on-prem, so we don't need it. I'm just simply going to skip it. Click on next. So this is a very important page. Of course, I have talked about all the features in details. They are in continuation with what you have seen in SQL Server 2017. You can find the link up somewhere, and these are continuation to that. So let's quickly talk about those features. If you click on any of the features, you can see their description over here. So this is the basic feature which we are going to have in case you want a SQL Server. Of course, what we are doing is we are installing a database engine services, and this is the basically what we need. Apart from that, on the database engine services, you can see these are nested upon that. So all of these services are dependent. For example, if you want SQL Server replication, you need that. It is under the database engine services. It is a part of database engine services. Same goes for machine learning. If you want them, you can have R, you can have Python, you can have Java, whatever you want. Earlier it used to be specifically towards R. Now they have included Python and Java as well. Then you have full text semantic searches. This is really helpful in case you are doing a database installation and you're going to have a lot of text data in your database and want to optimize searches for that text data. So this is going to create special kind of indexes and unlock additional function that you can use to do kind of a textual searches for your data. Okay. Then you have data quality services. Again, this is additional services if you want in case specifically for people who are doing more of an ETL work, this might be helpful. And then you have a polybase services which you can use in case you are on a heterogeneous kind of environment and there is a lot of interaction between SQL Server and other databases like Oracle or Teradata, stuff like that. Okay. Then you have your trusted analysis services, which is SSAS analysis services. This is our inbuilt warehousing system. I would say kind of a legacy or vanilla OLAP system inbuilt. Okay, in case you want that. Then you have shared features. These shared features, of course, are additional features which you want right off the box. For example, if you are installing a data quality services, you might need a data quality client as well so that you can interact with your quality services. Then you have something called integration services, which is known as SSIS in case you want to run an SSIS package on this machine. So this is kind of a bonus tip in case you are planning to install only SSIS services or maybe the SSAS services. All of these are licensed It means you might not be installing a database engine services, but you still need a standard or an enterprise edition license in order to install and run any of these services, or whether it be database engine services, whether it be analysis services, whether it be integration services. For all of them, you need a separate license. If you are bundling on one machine, you can have all the three with one license. But if you are installing only one of the services, let's suppose you want to run SSIS package and you are installing integration services, then there's going to be a separate license. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind when you're doing so, because that's going to uptick your cost, especially when you're talking about enterprise costing. Now for this page, you can see there are instance root, there are shade features, and all of this I usually left it to the root volume. Usually it is C drive, right? I do not change this one. These are almost 1 GB in size, as you can see, and these are the common runtime DLLs and EXEs what SQL Server needs to run. So it is better they are in the default location. Like even if you change them, there's still going to be certain components that are going to be installed in C drive. So you have to be careful that if any of them got missed, then your SQL Server might not work. So it is better all of them are on the same place. Now I'm clicking on the next. Of course, at this page is going to ask you whether you want a default instance or a named instance. Of course, I do not have any other SQL instance running on this machine, so I'm going to go with a default instance. If you want to run multiple instances, then you can name them anything over here and you can keep on installing other additional instances on your machine. Click on next. Now this is page where you're going to define service accounts for your services. When you install SQL Server and what it does, it creates a service associated with one of the features you have selected. For example, I have selected database engine is going to create a service out of this so that whenever you start your machine, the services can kick in and start your engine by default. So for that, you have to provide certain accounts so that these services can run. Now, when you're doing an enterprise install, what you can do is you can provide a domain level account over here instead of a local account so that you can have better control over that. For example, you can hook that to some kind of password management services so that it can come in and reset the password of that account in case it is required. So there are many organizations which are in like financial domain, and there could be a requirement that you have to rotate your passwords even for service accounts. And you can easily do that if you have a domain level account set over here. Then also the second advantage is that when you have a dedicated service accounts, you can do something called a least privilege services, which is also recommended by Microsoft. So that's why at this page, earlier way back like maybe in 2005, they used to run it with the local accounts, but now they have separated. Even if you see over here, they come up with a new names so that these service accounts can be of least privilege instead of running them with a network service or a local system, which are really high privilege accounts. Okay, so because I'm doing it locally on my machine, so I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm maybe do it manually as well because I don't want them to start when my laptop starts, and I will do it more on demand basis. But if you are doing it on production, of course all of this is going to be automatic. Okay, never leave them on manual. Now SQL browser services, just to let you know, as you can see, you cannot set it. It has to be a local service because what it does is it provides more of an assistance for discovery of your instance. Okay, so this is really helpful, especially when you have multiple instances running on the same machine, so that people can easily connect to them. Okay, then this is a really important checkbox: grant perform volume maintenance task. This enables your service accounts to something called instant file initialization. I'm going to do a separate video about this, so do follow me and subscribe so that you can learn what this especially does. This is really helpful, and I 100% recommend on each install you're either checking this box or manually providing this permissions. Okay, so this is really important. Now on the second tab, you can select your collations. So in case by default is CP1 CIAS. So CI over here is case insensitive, as you can see in the below, and AS means it is action sensitive. Okay, so but you can of course depending upon, in case you have a variety, you are doing a particular third-party installation or application, for that you are building your SQL server and they have certain collision needs, you can set it at the server level, or you can even set it at database level if you want to. Authentication by default is Windows authentication, and there is something called mixed mode. Again, this is mixed mode, this is not authentication. Authentication in mixed mode includes SQL Server authentication and Windows authentication. I often ask this question in my interviews and people confuse that. The two types of authentications are SQL Server authentication and Windows authentication. Mixed mode means we are going to use both of them. So I'm going to select mixed mode authentication over here and provide some password. I'm just picking something which I can remember. Of course, I will note it down separately on my notepad. Over this section, once you have, whether you have Windows authentication or mixed mode, what you are trying to specify apart from SA, okay, this when you select mixed mode, you are enabling SA account, but apart from SA, who's going to be the admin? Okay, so these are usually Windows or AD accounts which it is asking to be admin. Okay, so I'm simply going to do is click add user, because that is the minimum I'm going to add. In case you don't and it is completely optional that you are adding current user. If you are a part of a group, then I would recommend you click on add and add your group, okay, your database group. Now let's go to data directories. Now data directories, this is the page where I would say this will be more configuration, and you should be configuring, especially in a production system, that where your things are going to be. Okay, for your example, your data root directory is going to be your system databases, where is your going to be user databases, their log and your backups. So we are definitely going to change them even for my local. So what I have is I have created a SQL 2022 folder. I'm going to select that. Okay, once I select that, you can see that this is my instance name. It is taken from the previous configuration page, and everything then is going to be here. Okay, so you can keep as it is, not an issue. Okay, or you can do some customization over here if you want to. Okay, now they are going to sit on a single drive, so I'm not going to do a lot of customization, but what you can do is, in case you want your user databases and log drives to be on separate drive, you can provide it over here. Okay, now the third tab is to configure TempDB. You can provide the number of files you want to have, and what initial size they should have, what is the auto growth settings and stuff like that, and where it is going to create those TempDB files. A good number to start with is, to be honest with you, is 8. They usually provided 8. That most cases 8 files will going to suffice all the needs. You can have less, you can have more. So for example, if you have less than 8 cores, so you set the number of TempDB files equivalent to the number of cores you have. Okay, if you have less than 8 cores, and if you have anything 8 and above, just keep it for 8 to start with, and then you can go on as per in case you need more. Okay, if you see TempDB contention, then you can increase it, but 8 is a good number. Why? I'm going to tell you right now, because if I go at the max DOP settings, you can see that I have 32 cores, and it is asking me to set max DOP as 11. Again, this is a dynamic value. These are in 2022 setups. They have introduced this, that they are going to provide you a recommendation for max DOP value and your memory values. I'm going to keep it default for now, because after this I'm going to do another video where I'm going to talk about certain configuration that you should always change after installation, and this is part of that. So I'm going to explain about it in more details in that video. So again, subscribe so that you can know when that video is out and you can do those changes on your system. So I'm going to keep it default, okay, for now. Now let's go back to memory. Again, the default memory from ages, it's been this: minimum memory set to 0 and maximum memory set to almost 2 terabytes. Again, I'm not going to change it today. We will going to talk about these values in that video. Okay, Last tab is the file stream. File stream is again an additional feature in case you have certain type of data, especially the blob data, and you want that to be not part of the database file stored somewhere else, so that you can provide additional IO advantages to that. So this is that kind of feature you can enable in case you need that. Okay, so all of these configurations are done. We are going to click on next. Whenever you run a setup, okay, it's create something called a log folder for that under with a date and timestamp in something called setup bootstrap. Okay, so this is your version. For example, we are doing SQL 2022, which is SQL Server 160. Okay, and in that you have a folder, and in that you're going to have logs for each attempt. So even for service packs, you're going to see a log folder getting created in the setup bootstrap. Okay, and all the configurations which you have selected, you can file that in this configuration file.ini. This is really helpful because what you can do is you can simply use this configuration file.ini in your automation scripts in case you want to do rapid installation of SQL Server, which are going to have same kind of a server settings with same values everywhere. Okay, so this will what you do is just on the command prompt you provide this configuration file and you're done. Okay, it will going to pick up all those settings and going to install SQL Server rapidly without much of a user input on multiple services. So you can review all your settings, whatever you have done. In case you think something is missed, you can go back, change them at this point, and your configuration file will generate as per that, and then you can simply click on install and it will start installing your SQL Server 2022 instance. So I will let it run. It will going to install SQL Server on my machine and we are going to connect to it and work upon it. Of course, in next video, we are going to talk about those important SQL Server options, instance options that you must change as soon as you have installed, or if you have already have installed, then you can go back, review them and change them. Those are really going to help you your instance in performance as well as maintenance and administration. Till that time, happy learning.